Welcome to another episode of History of the Popes, where we explore the lives and legacies of those remarkable figures who have shaped the Catholic Church across the centuries. Today, we turn our attention to Pope Zephyrinus, the 15th successor of Peter, who guided the Church from the year 199 until his death in 217. In an era when the faith was a fragile flame flickering against the gales of persecution and doctrinal discord, Zephyrinus embodied the steadfast pastor, resolute in his devotion to the unity and the orthodoxy of the Christian community. Let us journey back to the Eternal City at the turn of the 3rd century, a Rome pulsating with the grandeur of empire and the undercurrents of a faith still finding its voice amid the shadows. To understand Zephyrinus, we must first paint the canvas of his world. The late 2nd century was no golden age for the Church. The Roman Empire, under the iron-fisted rule of Septimius Severus, who ascended the throne in 193, was a colossus of military might and cultural syncretism, where the old pagan gods, Jupiter and his pantheon, still held sway in the temples, but new philosophies and mystery cults whispered promises of transcendence to the restless elite. Christianity, that upstart religion born in the backwaters of Judea, had spread like rhizomes through the soil of the Mediterranean world, from the forums of Rome to the ports of Antioch and Alexandria. Yet it remained suspect, a foreign superstition that challenged the imperial cult and the social order. By the 190s, the Christian community in Rome numbered perhaps tens of thousands, artisans, slaves, merchants, and a scattering of patricians, gathering in house churches and catacombs, their liturgies a defiant echo of the Eucharist instituted by Christ himself. Into this milieu stepped Zephyrinus, a son of Rome, born around the middle of the 2nd century to a father named Habundius, according to the ancient Liber Pontificalis. We know little of his youth. The sources are sparse, as they often are for these early shepherds of the flock. Unlike the learned Origen or the fiery Tertullian, Zephyrinus was no philosopher or rhetorician. Hippolytus, that sharp-tongued presbyter, who would later declare himself antipope, dismissed him. Hippolytus, with his antipathy towards Zephyrinus's trusted aide Callistus, coloured his portrait with the hues of personal grievance. What emerges instead, when we sift the sands of Eusebius in the Catholic tradition, is a figure of humble origins, perhaps a freedman or a minor cleric, whose election in 1990, succeeding the more assertive Victor the Munez, marked him as the choice of a community weary of controversy and yearning for stability. Zephyrinus's pontificate, spanning 18 years, was bookended by 2 emperors whose policies tested the mettle of the faithful. Septimius Severus, that Punic-born general who clawed his way to power through civil war, issued an edict in 202 forbidding conversions to Christianity or Judaism under pain of death. It was not a total persecution, mind you. Severus, ever the pragmatist, tolerated existing believers but sought to stem the tide of proselytism that threatened the empire's religious cohesion. In the provinces, Africa, Egypt, Syria, the edict unleashed a torrent of martyrdoms. Perpetua and Felicity in Carthage, Irenaeus in Lyons. But in Rome itself, the storm was more intermittent, a drizzle of arrests and confiscations rather than a deluge. Zephyrinus, as bishop, became the unseen anchor for his people. He consoled the imprisoned, reconciled the lapsed who had sacrificed to the gods under duress, and buried the martyrs in the catacombs that honeycombed the Via Appia. One such burial ground, purchased by the community and entrusted to Callistus, would later bear that faithful servant's name, a testament to the collaborative spirit that defined Zephyrinus's leadership. Callistus, a former slave, unjustly condemned to the mines of Sardinia for alleged financial impropriety in Victor's time, had been ransomed by the church and sent to Anzio with a modest pension. Zephyrinus, upon his election, recalled him to Rome, appointing him not only overseer of the cemetery, but also chief deacon, the Pope's right hand in the daily governance of the see. This was no mere act of charity, it was a stroke of pastoral genius. Callistus, battle-hardened by suffering, brought practicality to the pontificate, a man who could negotiate with Roman officials, manage the communal funds, and ensure that the dead were honoured, even as the living huddled in fear. Yet to Hippolytus this elevation was folly, a sign of Zephyrinus' weakness, for Callistus would go on to champion a merciful approach to sinners that smacked of laxity in the eyes of the rigorists. Here we glimpse the deeper tensions of the age, the Church, still defining its boundaries, wrestling with the balance between justice and mercy, doctrine and discipline. The doctrinal tempests continued to exist during those years. If persecution was the external gale, heresy was the internal whirlwind, threatening to splinter the young Church into factions. Zephyrinus inherited from Victor a Rome buzzing with controversy. The monarchians, those who insisted on the absolute unity of God at the expense of the distinct persons of the Trinity, were gaining ground. Notice of Smyrna had arrived earlier, preaching that the Father himself had become incarnate in Christ, a modalism that blurred the lines between divine persons and risked reducing the Son to a mere mask of the Father. Praxeas, a sharp-minded lawyer from Asia Minor, echoed this in Rome, decrying the emerging Trinitarian language as tritheism, three gods in disguise. Tertullian, that brilliant but prickly North African, would later skewer Praxeas in his treatise, but not before the error had infected the capital. Then there were the Valentinians, disciples of the Alexandrian Gnostic Valentinus, who spun elaborate cosmologies of emanations and aeons, positing a demiurge, a lesser god, as the creator of the material world, trapping divine sparks in human flesh. Their rites, laced with secret knowledge and ascetic excesses, appealed to the intellectually curious but eroded the simplicity of the apostolic faith. And lurking in the shadows were the Montanists, that prophetic movement from Phrygia, led by Montanus, Prisca, and Maximilla, who claimed new revelations and an imminent parousia, urging rigorist purity and ecstatic speech. Proclus, a Montanist emissary, had stirred the pot in Rome, drawing followers with promises of divine immediacy. Against this cacophony, Zephyrinus stood as the guardian of orthodoxy, not with thunderous treatises, but with the quiet authority of tradition. Eusebius, that meticulous chronicler of the Church's first centuries, praises him as the principal defender of the divinity of Christ, a bulwark against those who diminished the Son's eternal Godhead. He excommunicated the Theodosians, followers of Theodotus the tanner and his successor the cobbler, who revived the adoptionist heresy, claiming Christ was a mere man empowered at his baptism or resurrection. Zephyrinus's interventions were firm but fraternal, seeking reconciliation where possible. Consider the poignant tale preserved by Eusebius. Natalius, a confessor of the faith under recent persecutions, was lured by the heretics of Theodotus with a salary of 150 denarii monthly and the title of bishop. Visions plagued him, angels scourging him in rebuke, until, weeping in sackcloth, he cast himself at Zephyrinus's feet, begging absolution. The Pope, moved by such contrition, received him back into the fold after due penance. Here, in microcosm, is Zephyrinus's pastoral heart, not condemnation for its own sake, but the outstretched hand of the shepherd reclaiming the stray. The great rift of Zephyrinus's reign came from within, the schism sparked by Hippolytus himself. This learned presbyter, a man of Greek paideia and Roman pride, accused Zephyrinus and Callistus of compromising the faith by readmitting repentant sinners too readily, murderers, adulterers, even apostates, after penance. To Hippolytus, this smacked of Novatian rigorism avant la lettre, a dilution of the Church's holiness. He penned his Refutation of All Heresies, a sprawling critique that spared neither pope nor heretic, and in 217, upon Zephyrinus's death, he would set himself up as antipope, consecrating a rival line. Amid these trials, Zephyrinus attended to the quiet rhythms of ecclesial life. The Liber Pontificalis, that venerable if sometimes fanciful chronicle, attributes to him two decrees, one mandating that ordinations, whether of priests, deacons or subdeacons, occur in the presence of both clergy and laity, ensuring communal witness to the laying on of hands, the other regulating the Eucharistic liturgy in Rome's tituli, those early parish churches, perhaps stipulating glass patens for the sacred vessels, a nod to the poverty of the community. He oversaw the expansion of the catacombs, those subterranean cities of the dead that doubled as sanctuaries of prayer, where the faithful etched their hope in frescoes of the Good Shepherd and the breaking of bread. As the year 217 dawned, Zephyrinus' health faltered. Tradition holds that he died on December 20th, not in the blaze of martyrdom like so many of his contemporaries, but worn by the cumulative weight of his office, the vigils for the persecuted, the debates with the errant, the solace for the sorrowing. Some hagiographers style him a confessor martyr for his sufferings, and who can argue? The slow crucifixion of leadership in crisis is its own via dolorosa. He was laid to rest in the very cemetery he had entrusted to Callistus, his body a seed sown in the earth of faith. His feast, once marked on August 26th in the Roman calendar, now graces December 20th in the Martyrology, a quiet commemoration for a quiet saint. What, then, shall we make of Zephyrinus in our own turbulent age? In an era of schisms amplified by social media, he reminds us that holiness need not shout. The Church is not a republic of intellectuals, nor a fortress of the pure, but in the words of Ephraim the Syrian, a hospital for sinners. He teaches us the virtue of the via media, the middle way, not as tepid compromise, but as the generous embrace of tradition's breadth. In defending Christ's divinity, he guarded the mystery of the Incarnation, God with us, not a distant emanation or a modal illusion, but the eternal Word made flesh for our salvation. As we conclude this reflection on Pope Zephyrinus, let us pause in gratitude for the unsung architects of our faith. Until next time, when we delve into the tumultuous reign of Callistus, his successor and sometime shadow, keep the popes in your prayers. For in their stories we glimpse the enduring drama of divine providence unfolding through human frailty. Pax et bonum.